Hello and welcome to another episode of the SENDhelp Podcast. And today I'm joined with Amy from Tribe Counselling. And I'm not going to butcher the intro about what she does. I'll let her explain it better for you in a minute. But it's going to be a good episode. And I think we're going to talk about role models and just a bit about what's missing in the SEN. And obviously, I suppose what is there, but obviously the bits that are missing, like role models and the gap between, positive influence and stuff like that. But I'll let Amy introduce herself and do the lovely things that she's doing and the helpful things that she's doing for the SEN community at the moment as well. So yeah.
Thank you very much. Yes, so I'm Amy from Tribe Counselling Psychotherapy. So I found this company a couple of years ago, and really it's from lived experience. A mother of two SEN children, and I'm also ADHD myself. Really, I kind of felt like growing up, really kind of misunderstood, and thankfully that's a bit better nowadays, well, a lot better than what it used to be. But I kind of felt like there's a bit of a niche in the market. There's so much disconnect when it comes to SEN and neurodiversity. And I kind of wanted to kind of create something that was a bit more obtainable, friendly for children and adults that want to seek counselling. And also just something that, kind of provides a bit more of that human touch when it comes to counselling, because having had counselling growing up, there was a lot of people that I felt weren't like me. And I think growing up working class, representation is so crucially important. And I think if you're going to share things with people, you kind of want to feel like there is a connection there and perhaps sometimes a lived experience. So that's really the idea around why I formed Tribe Counselling, because with neurodiversity myself, and as I say, I kind of wanted something that cuts through the noise, the stuffiness that counselling can sometimes bring. And so that's why I offer walk and talk therapy. If people need movement, regulation for counselling. And also in the therapy, they can bring fidgets if they need to, they can move, they don't have to have eye contact. And I feel like that's so needed at the moment, and to move away from the old-fashioned stereotypes that you're going to go to counselling and sit there with someone with a pen and paper and just feel like they're looking and judging you. I think no one really, I feel, would open up in that setting. It's very outdated. So really what I'm kind of trying to do with my company, as I say, is move along something that's more obtainable, something that's not intimidating, that people can think, oh yeah, actually, I think I could go to that. I think I could. So that is my kind of vision around it. And so more obtainable counselling, understanding of SEN, neurodiversity, and also bringing the regulation in as well, because what has helped me, like for a good 20 years, is exercise and my ADHD. So I kind of want to bring that part in as well. It's about the mind and the body working together. And I know, Nate, obviously you with the jiu-jitsu and everything like that, I think it's so important at the moment in sort of social media society. It's the exercise is kind of separate and the mental health is separate, and I kind of want to bring that together. So that's kind of my vision around all of it with Tribe Therapy.
That's brilliant. That sounds amazing. A couple of things from that, I just want to go back over. So, you said about it being outdated, the counselling. I spoken to counsellors before, and I think it is. There is. It seems like there is a massive gap when it comes. It doesn't necessarily need to be SEND, but with kids as well, about getting that kind of met with the mental health. Where I think counselling was always set up mainly for adults. I don't think kids. They kind of come second, didn't they? And I think playing catch up to that, and then with the SEND needs, it's like the very back. Is still talking therapy, isn't it, mostly?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, like you say, it is still predominantly like talking therapy, but thankfully I feel like there is a change. Like there is a change happening. I think the thing with counselling children is obviously their autonomy over, they're still learning themselves about their feelings, about their regulation. A lot of children are guided by their parents. So it's a different kind of therapy. A lot of children, they might feel cautious about opening up if their parents not there. So it is a different conversation. But that's why I feel like we need to open that up more with regards to different ways. So art therapy is really good because children, express themselves through play. So art therapy, walk and talk therapy, because it's not as intimidating as an adult looking at you. And I mean, any like dance therapy, I mean, all of those kind of things are a different form of expression, which you can then build on until you kind of get the trust of a child and they feel happy and secure with you. And then they can, but yeah, it's a different kind of therapy, but it's so needed. And I mean, as a therapist myself that's obviously had counselling, I think as well it's so important to find the right therapist, because you can go to counselling and not necessarily have a right match for you and then feel like counselling's not for you, when actually it could just be that that person you might not necessarily gel with. It doesn't mean it's like finding your person, because counselling's all about connection. And, you know, obviously it's important to have the qualifications and everything like that and be regulated, but that doesn't mean you can necessarily connect with everyone. And I think that's a really important piece that's misunderstood, is paying for the best, which obviously, as I say, I'm doing sort of like a generalized thing, but you've got to find someone you connect with, and that might not be the most expensive counsellor. That might just be someone that gets you and you feel safe with them. So yeah.
I would argue in this day and age they probably would be the better ones, the ones that are less expensive, because they're going to be the ones closer to home that have started up like yourself, that have the lived experience, that have the experience in the family as well, that are just trying to give back, rather than ones that are corporate that have just been doing the same thing over and over again. I'd say that it is important to even look around for alternatives than just the main that's out there.
Yeah.
Do you think I found this in the app. So when we've got this in the drama class in the app, and it's very weird to see how sort of indirect you can be with kids to get so much out of them. So we're doing a lot of like, so I dropped in a couple of lessons, and Sam, the drama teacher's doing a couple of like facial expressions and stuff like that. I couldn't believe for one, like the lack of imagination in the room when they was doing stuff like, just doing something like, you have to do this pen. What can you do this pen? It could be a magic wand. And then there was like, some of them were stuck like, but no, it's a pen. But it's a pen. And it's like, do it. And it made me realise that every single person in there would have a complete and utter unique style of learning and different pace. So it's really important. So it's like the smaller groups in it find to do better than the bigger groups, because you can get to tailored response. But I feel like if you're not with counselling, I don't think it's necessarily has been built on what the client is based on, is it? Because you go to a counsellor, it's kind of, from my experience, it's expected and laid out how it's done by the counsellor instead of it done by how you need it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I know, and I think that's the thing. I mean, a lot of the kind of what counselling's based on is a lot of kind of theories and things from the 60s and 70s, and predominantly white men. And it's a lot of theories are based on that, and we've moved on now. Like, I mean, not saying that's not relevant. Obviously, that's like that is useful. It's not discrediting it, but nowadays it's like it's not how we work. And you know, because very back in the day, you know, with Sigmund Freud, it's like sitting in the chair and just kind of like analysing someone. Now it's more about reaching in, connecting. As I say, doing walk and talk therapy. Just being human, like a lot more. And I agree with what you're saying. It's about, and this is what I do, what is it, what sort of language is it, what is their way of mode of communication, because everyone's different. So it's not that some people don't want to say anything. For example, with some students or adults with autism, deeply feeling individuals might not be able to describe how they feel, but that doesn't mean that they're not feeling those things. It might mean that they need more of a kind of a multiple choice of, is it this? Do we need to adapt it? Do we need visuals? Because it's not that they're not feeling it, but they need a different way than perhaps a neurotypical might be able to say, I feel this, for example. So I agree. I think so much could have been missed perhaps previously by just doing one type of counselling, and everyone's different, of course, and especially with neurodiversity. So it's finding the key to what is the way that person communicates, so you can find a way into their world and be with them there where they're comfortable. And is that art? Is that through like expression? Is that through sports? And so I completely agree with that.
And you'd also, when you get to like the severe end of autism and non-verbal and stuff, to give them the opportunity, you'd have to adapt to it not being talking therapy as well. So it gives it as a whole, it gives everybody access to therapy in a sense. If you're adapted like through play therapy, art therapy, and stuff like that. And I think that sounds a lot more appealing, especially for a kid, even for an adult, I think, than even going into that room and just speaking to someone. with that, it's not just that though, is it? Like, so you talk about role models and stuff. It's all right talking about stuff, but to be influenced is different, isn't it? To be influenced by someone. So, you were saying that you think there's a big gap in that with the Sen kids specifically about people doing stuff and everything like good stuff, but there's no one like influencing the generation to become a certain type of way, apart from a fair few.
Yes. Yeah, I think what Tom Hardy's doing is brilliant, because I think it's just representation of you can do what you need to do, and you might have certain difficulties and certain things that you need to acknowledge, but that doesn't mean you can't succeed. And I feel like there's just something about Tom Hardy that's kind of more realistic as well for children, but also for men, because there's not a lot of role models out there with regards to, I mean, what I sometimes see in therapy, obviously it's a mixture, but it's quite a lot to process if you've lived till, you know, you're 40 years old and not knowing that you're neurodiverse, and you've discovered it through your child. And I think to go through everyone's obviously experiences individual of what they go through, it could be, oh right, okay, that I get that makes sense now, or oh my gosh, so all my life I've really struggled, and it's quite a process to go through. I think to have someone like Tom Hardy that's just, you know, very down to earth, does jiu-jitsu, it's obviously like that, it feels more obtainable, kind of as a, okay, that's a realistic, I feel like that's similar to what I could be like, which I think is just so needed, as I say, particularly for men, for young boys, for teenagers. There's not enough people out there with that representation, and what he's doing with the Brazilian jiu-jitsu and all of the clothing for autism, wonderful. That's what we need, because I feel like obviously the spectrum is so broad, but it's very kind of the view, I think the societal view is just one end of the spectrum, where there could be someone with very high needs, or it could be someone that's more neurotypical, and the spectrum is so broad, and we need more representation of those different kinds of people. And it does feel like it's slowly changing, but there's still a lot of work to do with regards to that.
Yeah, I do think it, and I think from a social media point of view, I can say that I worry, and it's one of the things that keeps me up at night, if like the saying goes, because what is my kid going to see when he looks up and sees like Google's ADHD, and it's not going to be good. It's not going to be. There's not enough Tom Hardys that are saying, look what I'm doing. It's all doom and gloom, and there's a lot of parents in distress, and I always question about. He's gonna. I'm very. As he's got older, I'm very aware. Like, especially with my content, I'd be like, this is out there. Like, I'm not just trying to trick him and saying it's not out anymore. And he kind of agrees, and there's certain stuff that I now don't put out, which I think's fair. But I worry that it's just he's gonna look up to that one day and go, oh, what a nightmare I was. You know, and it's not enough of the positive influence. And I think kids. I think that people miss that as much as we are in that thing about coming together and saying there is an issue and there is that, we are forgetting to lead the next generation into something positive, which would be we can do something, where at the moment it's a very we can't do attitude with autism and ADHD, which is, it's not true. It's actually the opposite, I would argue.
Yeah, but I disagree with what you said, because I think there's a lot of parents like you that are working really hard to change the narrative, and I think that's something to be proud of, because there's a lot of parents that grew up feeling misunderstood, living in different times where we didn't have the awareness. And I think doing the work that you're doing now, I mean, I obviously can't speak for your son, but I think a lot would feel, I mean, grateful for the fact that we're out there and we're trying to do all we can as parents to say, you know, I want there to be more understanding, like what we're saying, I want there to be more representation, and I'm playing a part in doing that. And a lot of parents are also doing that. They're standing up for their kids, they're advocating for their kids and saying, this isn't good enough, I'm not putting up with this. And it's not that the parents aren't doing enough, it's that we don't have enough help. It's like we don't have enough help from the school, we don't have enough people working with us. It feels like you've got so much resistance in schools at times, and that's the thing around it. I think it's parents are, what I see in my clinic and online is parents on these pages going, what can I do? I will do whatever I need to do. It's not about, I feel, the parents not doing enough, and you know, you're never going to have a perfect, there's no such thing as a perfect parent, but we're all, I would say, like, you know, most are trying to do their best and changing the narrative of perhaps what we grew up in.
I suppose, yeah, I think what I meant by that is there's not enough, there is, obviously everyone has a space for to have that kind of space, and we're entitled to that, and that's how we're growing as a SEND community. But I don't think anyone's prioritising just being positive. So like in that space there is a lot of that as well, but there's no one speaking directly. So there's a lot of it's like letting the children lead. I was speaking to the author of it the other day. It's a bit like we do a lot to fight to what's entitled, but if you ask a child, the child probably wouldn't say about half of it. Do you know what I mean? Wouldn't want half, wouldn't fight for half of it. But it's meeting in the middle about kind of what the child is missing, in the sense of, I think it again is role models, like you were saying earlier. And I think that's a field. I think it is very needed. What the parents are doing at the moment, and I'm not saying that that's not real, because I speak to hundreds of parents, and that's also really, that's a different conversation completely, isn't it? The crisis that's going on, and the level of crisis. But I think that there is that still doesn't mean that there shouldn't be people with role models still directing the can-do attitudes and stuff like that. And I think it is easy. I know why. I'm the reason I said from a social media point of view is because I'm very aware of negative posts get a lot more traction than positive posts. So it's a lot more easier to be getting views or getting comments on something negative than it is positive. And it really, you have to try 3-4 times as hard if you're trying to be a positive creator to a negative creative sort of thing. So I was more talking of creators more than I was families and parents. But when it comes to the parents, as we've gone into that as well, because you speak to them a lot, that is a different experience completely. I don't think people, apart from people that are working like me and you in the field, would understand how much of a crisis families are in every area. I mean, whether it be waiting for medication, whether it be an EHCP, whether it be for going into a school, getting the right placement, every hurdle is absolutely excruciatingly long and full of no guidance, and just it's the only way to describe it, I suppose. It's made to do what it's doing. It's delaying any support that's getting through to any parents or any kids, and by the time that you are getting there, you're in the higher end level. And even as I said, they'll be at the counselling end, even if they didn't start like that, when they just thought at 3 or 4, when they thought, oh, maybe they need a diagnosis. By the time they're 11 and getting heard, what have they gone through? You get a lot of that with your work, of like families in that situation that have been through years and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I get what you're saying. And I think as well, it's like sometimes, not all the time, there's kind of like a lot of shame and isolation with that, isn't there? The work you're doing, you just kind of keep doing for your child and advocating for your child. And then a lot of the time parents are so exhausted, there's no kind of coming together. And I mean, people, do online, like you say, social media and things. But it's very isolating for the parent that's constantly advocating, constantly trying to get needs met, and feeling quite alone, and then being a parent and working as well. So I do get what you're saying, and I think it would just be nice, like you say, for it to change with the community, because there's so many strengths of neurodiversity that I feel like should be celebrated. There's so many strengths of obviously there's difficulties to face, but there's so much more to be celebrated as well. So I get what you're saying.
It is hard as well. Do you, with what level of support do you think? No, what bit of support do you think is missing from this majorly for when it comes to the mental health? So obviously we know the mental health system is just lacking anyway. But what do you think is a major piece that's not being recognised or spoken about enough?
Well, it's definitely spoken about enough, but I would say the help in schools. Like I mean, I could absolutely talk about this all day long. It's with regards to, I think it's crazy that as a profession, I know teachers already have a lot and under a lot of strain, but I find it crazy in this day and age where there is so much known neurodiversity. It's always been there, but now it's obviously more kind of recognised, that you don't necessarily have to be trained in neurodiversity. And I think that's crazy, because if you did any job that you weren't trained in, then that wouldn't be right. But with small children that you're with for a considerable amount of time a day, 6.5 hours, 7, even maybe longer, to not have the training, I think is crazy, because either way you're going to do the work, you do some training, so prevention rather than cure. You can see signs of a child that's becoming dysregulated. You know how to step in before it escalates. You can recognise those things. And, I just think it's crazy, because I feel like that prevention might help rather than getting to the stage of crisis. I'm not saying it's all down to the teachers, but I'm saying that children spend a lot of time in school, and I feel like there could be work done there where there is that prevention of, I'm recognising this, I can step in, I can do something. to a child that's become so dysregulated, they can't go into school, they can't face school, or they're getting into trouble. And that for me, I feel like it needs to change. And I don't understand how, with everything in society and everything that's going on, that never changes with schools. It's all of us that have to change, the children that have to change and adapt. The children have to wait for ages on waiting lists, but they're still expected to go into school in an environment that has been the same for, you know, how many years. Even though we've evolved as people and we have different needs, things are still taught the same, and children are still expected to act the same, but they're not. So I think that would help massively with regards to just some awareness and knowledge of themselves and their attachment style. Like, you know, as a psychotherapist, I think, you know, whatever that teacher grew up with and their own patterns and their own upbringing could influence how they might necessarily look at a child. They could already be possibly making a judgment, or not even being aware that they're not connecting with that child because of their own things that they're not aware of, if you know what I mean. So there's so much going on in that classroom that it's not just to do with the children, it's to do with the teachers and the day-to-day. And I think, and you know, there is some schools doing that, and there is some wonderful schools that do that, but there's a lot that's not there, and there's a lot of needs that aren't being met, which is why children are masking, they're stuffing their feelings down until they get to a point of, I can't do this anymore, and collapse or school refusal. I'm not saying it's all down to that, but I would certainly say that's a large amount of it contributing to it because of them being in that environment for so long, all day long.
Absolutely agree. Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail in the head, and that's why I think there is a lot of speaking about it. But it's like that's the least change, isn't it? Like we pay so much around that we've kind of been acceptable. Every business is becoming flexible, even to the point, and schools are just rigid and just so far away from even think. You don't have any hope that anything meaningful is going to happen from this generation or the next. Like it's quite bad, isn't it? Because for multiple reasons, I suppose, as you said, mainly they're there most of the time. So if someone's got your child for the majority of their upbringing, you would think that they're going to have the things in place for the day to day, but they don't, and they're the ones that don't have it more so than anyone else outside of that. Yes. And that alone, that is crazy, because if you think about it from any other diagnosis, it's like some kids are waiting for a diagnosis and then getting treated and punished for having that diagnosis.
Yeah.
So it's like they're waiting for this answer. I see this so many times, it's heartbreaking. And they think this answer of the diagnosis is going to give them anything. And the schools use that diagnosis against them to then prevent them further getting education or further coming in field. And I know there's a lot of politics, but if I'm talking about schools in a whole, it's hard because I've spoken to teachers and I've got a more balanced view than I did do. But schools are not doing good enough. They're not. There is not enough that they're doing that I can see that is trying to change this narrative even from the inside out. That there's your teacher that are trying to do stuff that I see that are really good that probably end up having to leave. The majority think it's not, you know, it's practical it being like that. And I think the more higher up you go, the more that they're rigid in that way. So I'm not saying like TAs, teachers and stuff. I'm more talking about head teachers and just the way that schools are run by their ethos level. But it is crazy. I just can't. It makes me question my sanity every time I really think about what's going on in schools with these kids.
Yeah, and I just feel like it's heartbreaking and sad for kids that are saying, like, I don't feel safe, I can't be myself, I can't help it that I move, because, you know, it's like, I think some schools seeing movement as a behavioural choice rather than a way that their brain is, that they need movement. If they have ADHD, they're not going to be able to sit there for a couple of hours without a movement break. And so to punish a child for something that they can't help and then further bring shame on them, that's just adding that more layer of, like, you are difficult, why can't you sit still like everyone else? Probably because their brain is different. But it's still, like you said, there is some wonderful teachers, and there is some, but it's not as a whole. So you do get those ones in school and you think, oh, okay, like, you know, you feel like you can trust them. You feel like, okay, they kind of get it, but it's not enough. And so, yeah, kids are having to squash themselves down, get into trouble for things that they can't help, or just refuse altogether. And then the worst thing is, they're the ones that have gone through that trauma, but then they've still got it on their head of, can you just try and go into school? Can you just try? And it's like, the kids are the ones that have been trying, like, kind of need to be met halfway with some, you know, learning adaptions. I mean, speaking from experience with my eldest, You know, before we got the diagnosis, he wasn't able to sit still. And I said, doing 2-hour lessons in the morning and then going straight to assembly, then doing a break, I don't think an adult could do that. They'd have to get up and have a walk around, have a cup of tea, like, you know, if they... But we're forcing kids into that. And I said so many times, please, can you just let them have a 5-minute movement break? Can we swap the break around? No, no, no. Completely rigid. And then what happened was everyone in assembly got kept in and couldn't go out for their break because they needed movement and they're all fidgeting. But apparently there wasn't a problem. So I think that's the thing I mean, I know this is a whole nother thing I could go into for ages, but it's the gaslighting of like, no, we don't see that here. There's not a problem, even though like no one can go out for a break now and they actually need a longer break because you've held them in so long and they need movement. But no, we don't see that here. I mean, honestly, that saying just goes right through me because there's so much of that, isn't there? Yeah. But, you know, there is people out there doing the work and there is schools that are doing it, but collectively it's like to work together, like you say, and not have that odd teacher or have a few teachers that get it. It's just to change the way, schooling is. And it's so outdated and, it's terrible.
It is a bit funny, isn't it, with... I would argue, in this day and age, knowing I've got kids, even without the neurodiversity, any child to sit that long, it's too much. Like, even in primary school, it's too much. Like, it should be like 10, 15 minutes and break, 10, 15 minutes and break. And I think that even it's mad to think that they haven't even clocked on that for the evolution of children, of what we found out. Not less like... just for SEND needs, so, you know, all these SEND kids need. No, all kids would thrive in these little classes with these little breaks and these more movement, and like it's mental that it's all down to SEND when realistically most of this would help every child, and that's the crazy bit. And then you get to secondary, and secondary is just a complete different ethos, isn't it, when it comes to again, this is where the punishment of defiance gets done, not sit still or defiant listening. It's insane that we're still living in that world, and I've got a kid going into secondary, and I'm really worried what that's going to do to him if they've got a school like that. Like, it is because it's escalated since I was in school. So the things you get detention for now, I would argue, are really extreme compared to when I went to school. You wouldn't get a detention for not sitting still or for maybe walking. That was extreme. You'd have to like throw a pen at someone's head or swear or throw, you know what I mean, or be violent or have, you know, be really, really destructive or something like. But they get. I hear kids getting detentions all the time just for again not sitting still, not following the teacher while he's walking around the classroom, like dropping too many pens.
Oh my gosh, I know. I hear that in clinic. You have to have eyes on the board because apparently eyes on the board means that you're concentrating, even though really, as humans, when you are really concentrating or you listen to something, you don't necessarily make eye contact, do you? Because you're like concentrating, you're like this. But no, apparently that means that you are locked in and listening if eyes are on the board. And it just feels like really military, doesn't it? It's got, like you say, it's gone from what I remember school to super strict. And I mean, I popped into a secondary a couple of months ago, and I have to say, like, it was very like, once you're in, and you have to get fobbed out, and they locked the doors, and there was a couple of teenagers that came in late, and the way they were spoken to was absolutely disgusting. Like, they don't know why they were late, they don't know what happened, it might not have been their fault, it might have been a parent that dropped them off late, but they were spoken to disgustingly, and I thought, well, now they've got to go in and have a nice day and learn when they've just been spoken to like that. And if they do that with parents in reception, then so I just think the whole thing needs to change around it. I do understand that managing a lot of children, you know, that is a whole thing, and that you have to have a certain amount, obviously, of, you know, rules and everything that you need to follow. But like, going back to what you said, I feel like the neurodiverse community are just really honest, and they're honest in what they can't do. There's some things that they literally can't do, like sit still and stuff like that. But as a whole, that will benefit everyone. Just being a little bit more human, just being a bit kinder, not just being so rigid, and sometimes like sort of inducing the anxiety, because there was a child that I saw that always got sent out for things they couldn't help. They had their plan there, they had their timetable, they had all their needs there at the top, who they like to sit next to, what helps them regulate. The teacher didn't follow it, and because they moved, they got sent out. So because they got sent out so much, she actually just put her hand up and said, can you just send me out? Because it's making me feel anxious thinking that you're going to do it, and I don't know when, so just do it. So it's like that, you know, Yeah, it's the whole piece around, instead of doubling down and being stricter, sometimes just try and just be a bit more human, and you know, like yeah, because I just think there's so much resistance because it's, you know,
There
so
is a
strict.
shadowy. I get it in the comments as well about, and again, it's like this punitive. Do as I say, for no reason. Like regard, it's like again, the only way to describe it is a bit like misogynistic. It really
Yeah,
is that, and it's like that's come out in. It's almost like retaliation, um, of even speaking out about there should be a different schooling system, and they're like, oh really? Look, we'll see how it's run, and it's like it's
yeah,
that's what kind of feels like it's happened. It's almost like no, you will do as we say, and it's like they're really doubling, tripling down on the punishments and the way that it's got to be done, and I don't understand where that's coming from. And again, following the teacher and that like, eyes on the board, I heard one person say this to me, and I thought that's they got to be lying. Not gonna lie, I'm sorry whoever that was, but I thought you was absolutely lying. That's not that strict. And then I heard 2 people, then 3 people, then 4 people, and I was thinking they're actually doing this in school this day and age. Like
yeah,
to follow a teacher, like a military, like that is
yeah,
no one's going to want to do it. It's intimidating. So
yeah.
it's intimidating for one, isn't it? Especially if you've got. Why would you want that anyway? I wouldn't want loads of kids staring at me the whole time, like watching me like that. Like what?
I mean, I mean, from what I've seen working in some schools is there's a lot of power, and there's a lot of, you know, the power dynamic of adults working with children. There's,
Yeah.
probably won't be like a popular comment, but there is a lot of ego and a lot of like, you know, and I think to be an adult in a school where you're already going from the start, where there's a power imbalance because you are the adult and you are the teacher, to then add more and more layers onto that about, you know, you must look at me and you must be like this and you must be like that, I think says a lot about the teachers, because I think as a therapist, you want to get on the level of a child. If you want to get the best out of them, and I know not everyone might have the time to necessarily do everything, but you kind of need to be on their level. What do they like, and kind of find a way into their world, not by, it's very outdated, I feel. It's just, I can't believe in this day and age, it's still like, you know, almost like, yes, you must obey me and you must be like this. And to navigate all of that anyway, as a neurotypical child, but let alone a neurodivergent child, and then learn on top of that, where you have to make sure that, you know, I've seen children that are like, they have to sit still and they're not even allowed to look behind. They have to have hands on the table, eyes on the board, and they're not allowed to look behind. It's not funny, but it's crazy that that's happening, and yeah,
You know what? They done their own documentary. Louis Theroux needs to go into schools and do like a Manosphere Part 2. Like
yeah,
I swear, like
yeah.
I think it is.
I
Because
was
it
going to say
is.
that's a really good point about where does that go? All of the way that some kids are treated, where does that go? All of that being necessary, like sometimes spoken to in that way, having a lot of stuff, their feelings pushed down, being told a certain way, not being able to talk, advocate for their needs, and then they might, like, you know, come out, and then there's just that, whether they're able to channel that in sports or whatnot, but you can kind of see how, not saying there's a direct line of it, but with not really having a role model, being like that in school, and then you get people, you know, looking up to someone like Andrew Tate, who is obviously complete end, which I obviously do not support, but it's almost like they go from the other end of not being listened to, not being able to regulate, not being heard, to in search of that belonging, and then they take it to the extreme, like some, obviously not
Yeah.
everyone.
No, that's it. And I think it is. My comment section is for one of the ones that go viral. And I will never forget this video, and I still don't know why. All I said was about schools getting. Why is it that harmful to let them wear a pair of trainers? And oh my god, the outrage, the outrage. With
What
just,
is,
because they was all going, no, they should wear it. It's discipline. This is why they're little shits. This is why they don't do this. And I'm like, these are regular people in the comments section. These aren't even teachers. These are just people. And I couldn't believe that it's actually a public opinion as well as a school thing. Some of these disciplinaries. So I see it every day. Every day you put something about Sen or something like that. I know there's trolls out there, but there's enough consistency and people that argue to know that there is actually public opinion about the. And it's almost like what that is it? I don't know what it is. It's kind of like guilt, not guilt. It's kind of they went through it, so they want everyone else to go through it. It's not fair if you didn't go
yeah,
through that. I think there's a lot of that out there as well, isn't there? Like back in
yeah,
my day, we used to get caned. Back in my day, we wouldn't be doing this yet, but that
yeah.
doesn't mean it's right, Janice. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, it's so true. That's what I was going to say. It's like inherited old beliefs of what they went through. So, because if they went through it, then it's like, well, it's not the same experience, but you're not getting what I had, so you've got to make do. Even though they would probably appreciate the fact they don't have to wear a suit to work every day, that they can work from home, that they can have regular breaks, that they're able to say how they feel and advocate for themselves. But they want children to go in dressed in suits, not being able to take their blazers off in hot weather, and not being able to be comfortable. It's just very contradictory, isn't it? And like you say, it's that the old kind of fashioned ways and beliefs, very disconnected from the real world. Whereas actually there is some schools where they don't even have uniform anymore. You know, there's schools around here where they don't have uniform. They can come in, they can be themselves. And actually, I was going to say, go back to the earlier point, there's some private schools that they do like 40-minute lessons, which is much more realistic. Like, you know, to be able to actually concentrate and you know, there's science behind it that children, I think, can concentrate, you know, depending on age, is a maximum of about 20 minutes, and then they start zoning out. So to expect young little kids to sit there for hours and hours is absolutely, it's just not possible. But I think adapting that more realistic approach surely makes sense. But like you say, some people have their old-fashioned beliefs and values and feel like children now need to go through that as well. Yes.
It falls down to that's my ultimate. That's why I'll get to my conclusion about schools. Is there's not enough teachers that are just are standing up and striking about situations like that. Is there? There's too many of them agreeing that their schools are not actioning against it. But they all know what's wrong and what needs to change. There's not enough of them inside making that a point of being spoken about. You know, and I understand to a certain degree that you have to conform or you end up isolated and end up your job's at risk and stuff. But surely, if every teacher in that school knows about it, why are you not saying about it? It's because there'll be that one old teacher that's going against it, or the head that doesn't agree with it, or you're wasting your time, or you're going to get marked down if you do that. It's a lot of really bad politics, isn't it, really, like, about it as well.
Yeah, I think that them as teachers sometimes as well is also restricted because it's filtered down. This kind of, for me, it's just very rigid power and control that's filtered down. I mean, I've worked in schools where you've seen someone come in and they're like very sprightly and colourful, and you think, oh, and they're wonderful with the kids, and then you can almost see the slow dimming of the light where it's kind of like, we say that you can express yourself and be yourself and you know, and do all of that, but not really. Like, you've got to really conform and be rigid and be the same as the system, because otherwise people look at you and go, oh, he's full of hopes and dreams for the kids. We don't do that here. But yeah, it's a whole kind of change, I think, that has to start, like, you know, out of schools, the people that manage schools and everything. That the whole thing, isn't it? Is just the whole system is outdated.
It is, yeah, it is. Going back to what you were saying about the therapy and stuff like that, what do you think about, you know, you said about connecting it, is that you're trying to connect sports and the mental health and stuff like that, and I think that's brilliant, because I've always thought that, and it's good to know that someone else knows that too, and it wasn't just me thinking like but because working out and exercise and mental health and Sen all are hand in hand, and the fact that we are treating it all so individual is crazy, because I argue sometimes as well, without I don't agree with medication in the sense of like unanimously. I don't say everyone should. It's your personal choice at the end of the day. But if your personal choice is not to take medication and then you're having issues and you're not doing any of the other stuff, it's almost like, what did you expect? I don't think people understand. If they knew that if they didn't want to do that and they'd done exercise, that could be a replacement.
Yeah.
It's so much. It's like I see people that don't take medication or don't do the stuff like that, but don't connect. It's just not spoken about, is it? No one says ADHD and exercise. It's just exercise. It's just,
no, I know,
isn't it? It's almost like no one's doing it with the drive of ADHD. It really helps your symptoms, because it really does. And it shocked me when I started doing stuff how much that was, because before that I would have been one of the people that probably might be listening now and be like, exercise, yeah, right. Oh my God, you would eat your words about how much that could be like the best habit you've ever had.
Honestly, I feel like I think it's saved my life, because it's been like an absolute, like, for me as a teenager growing up, like undiagnosed and having ADHD and having the combination ADHD with a busy mind and needing to move and not being able to manage emotions, not knowing what was wrong with me and always feeling different. I think to find your thing as an outlet is just so important. It's like, for me, what I found was body combat and boxing. So for me, I can go there, and it just quiets the mind. I can just go for it. It helps with everything, because it obviously helps with the fitness, but also helps my mind as well. Everything's calmer. Also, obviously, with the discipline of going, because you're going with like-minded individuals and you meet people from all walks of life, which is great because you get so many different perspectives on lived experience through a variety of things. But yeah, the regulation piece for me was amazing. And like you say, I think there's a lot of people that are in sports and do those kind of things. I mean, I think on Instagram, it's more, I've seen a lot of women that are saying like ADHD is great for that, and, you know, exercise is great for ADHD. But like you say, it's not so much like marrying the two with regards to mental health, exercise, and certainly not for kids as well. Because I agree with what you said. I think it's almost like you have to treat the child as an individual. What do they need? What is it they need? Do they need to, you know, in the morning go out into the garden and, like, you know, kick a football around? Do they need to do something in the morning to kind of get the wriggles they feel so they can sit still? Is there something that they can do? You know, it's finding what your thing is, definitely, because there's other sports I would do that would not give me the same effect as what I do when I do body combat. So it's finding your thing, and absolutely goes hand in hand. But like you say, it's individual. You've kind of got to find what your child needs, and it's almost like a recipe, isn't it, of like, what times do you need it the most, what is it you need, and yeah, it goes all together. So like you say, that's kind of what I want to do with Tribe Therapies, is eventually offer that as well, the kind of exercise with like the nourishment of food, and also with the mind all together, because it does make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it does make sense. And even just with mental health, isn't it? It connects to mental health. Exercise and mental health works wonders. Like,
Yeah.
how do you feel depression? Do the opposite. Go out and do exercise.
Yeah.
Simple. And it is as simple as that. And I think it's so hard to believe that some mental health, when you're feeling that low, because I've been there, and you're feeling that low, you've got that anxiety, you're feeling cripply, you feel like it's only unique to you, the situation.
Yes.
And you're like, someone goes, yeah, why don't you just go running? And you're like, you want to take your head off. You're like, you have no idea what I'm going through. How dare you say something so simple? But it really is. And I think we resist the simple things like change a diet. Oh my God. Diet in itself can change your life. I cut off sugar. I'm not on it no more. I might go back. But I went on a really harsh one and cut out sugar. Changed my life. I don't even drink. I only drink water now as well. The water and coffee, that's it. I don't have fizzy drinks.
Wow.
I really started tasting it to the point of tasting the chemical of the sugar, of like even having it in stuff like that. But I couldn't believe, one, the withdrawal from something that was in every bit of my food, and then two, how much better I felt afterwards. Like energy levels, like not wanting to go for a nap or just nap the day away or just doing the bare minimum. Like I was active, but it was nice, not like an ADHD.
Yes, I know what you mean.
It was a mellowing, like, you know, concentrated, clear-headed, and I couldn't believe it. And I kept trying and error and just doubling down, getting more healthy, and just getting going. I suppose again, discipline got in the way, and ADHD getting in the way, so I slipped a bit. But it really does. It really, just eating healthily, it can change the makeup to make you have a chance to get out of like whatever situation you're in.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And like you say, the exercise, I've been there as well. I mean, as I say, it's literally been a lifesaver, because I mean, growing up as a teenager, I was angry quite a lot, and it was always very much like, you know, there wasn't that understanding. It was very much like, you know, so to have something to channel it into, and to feel better. I mean, and I still feel like when I wake up in the morning, I feel like it's literally like you know, like a car that can't start. My brain feels like it's not online. And going and doing exercise in the morning is like I've had that jump start, and I can feel it in myself that everything starts going, and I'm like, right, we're online, we're ready to go. And I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, I'm going to do it for as long as I can, but I don't know what I'm going to do when I get older, because I'm going to have to do something else. I have to do it because it is literally my survival. Like, and if I don't do it and I'm not able to go because there's things that have happened with the kids and I've got to do, you know, whatever mum things, I can feel it in myself. I can feel it in myself that I'm starting to feel low, and I'm starting to feel different, and I'm starting to feel negative, and I think, oh, I've got to get a combat workout in, whether that's me getting there or, you know, I have to do something, whether I do it like virtually. But like you say, it works wonders. I think it's just crucially to find your thing, but also, going back to the name of my thing, is to find your tribe. I think it's also, that's why I've called it that, because it really is about finding your people as well. People that get it, people with lived experience, like what you said, people that know, like, because I've made so many good friends from going to the gym, of people that are there at the same time as me, going for like similar reasons, from all walks of life, and formed some better friendships than I've had since when I was younger, because you're kind of just so aligned with the purpose of what you're doing, and for whatever reason that is, for mental health or, you know, regulation. And it's really lovely because it's that nice piece of belonging, because you feel like people get it, and I don't always talk to them all the time because obviously we're there to do exercise, so, but it's just to say hello and just that acknowledgement of that belonging and purpose of part of that community. That's what I would like to do with Tribe as well with regards to that for children, because it is good that you have sports clubs and things to be a part of, but you know, sometimes the barrier to that is not having the SEN training. It's coaches with purpose that won't necessarily know how to talk to children and not know how to, and then I think some SEN children will stay away because of the approach, because not all children are going to learn the same way, and especially with SEN kids with tone or certain looks, there can be certain things that a coach might even realise they're doing that could be put a child off and say, oh no, I'm not sure, I don't think so, because they've got to feel psychologically safe to do it. And that's, I think is probably a huge part.
You get that lot in football. So like football coaches, they're notoriously rigid as a football coach. They wouldn't tailor even notoriously wouldn't tailor their approach to an autistic kid or an ADHD kid or something like that. They're just rigid, and like it's very complete opposite to like a jiu-jitsu gym. Where you go in there, it's all welcome, everyone's speaking to you. First time you go in there, the parents are like, how you doing? Like, you know, you're not screaming to try and like take someone's head off like the other kids. Like, it's all respectful, and it's like that just different approach opens up so many more doors, and it makes you want to come back, and it makes you, people see going out and doing stuff like this is scary, but again, I think maybe they have had that one experience in the wrong place, or the wrong person that's or the wrong perception of what it is that they're actually walking into. And I think once you find that belonging, it's almost addictive, isn't it, to keep going into that environment that gave you them strong connections. And as you said, you're already panicking about in like what 30 years time when maybe you can't punch someone in the face, but I'm sure by then you know what I mean, like the fact that you've already gone, do you know what, I don't know what I'm going to do, and it stopped. But it just shows you the importance of these things once you find it, isn't it? Like it really is, it becomes like your would you argue that that will be stronger than any medication that you could ever be on?
I don't always punch people in the face, by the way. It's more of it's more of a, no, but I know what you're saying. It's more of a, it's definitely finding your thing and finding your people, the belonging of it. But also, like you say, with regards to martial arts though, that is a different thing. Like you say, some football and things like that is, like you say, got a different reputation and a different thing. But martial arts, I think it's because it's embedded in the way that it is with martial arts, that it's about respect. It's about respecting other people. It's about knowing that you can do some damage, but you choose not to, because it's about defending yourself. It's about looking after your body. It's about all the moral stuff around it, which I think, like you say, when you go to a martial arts kind of dojo or gym or whatever, you can feel the difference, because when you know that you have that and you're powerful, you don't have to prove anything. And I think, like you say, sometimes in some of the other places, like for example football, there's a lot of, you've got to prove this. There's also a lot of dads like reliving their dreams through their kids and not actually seeing their child for who they are, and more about what they want them to be, and maybe stuff they didn't achieve themselves. I'm not saying it's always like that, but I've certainly witnessed that. But when you go to, like by us, we've got the Carlson Gracie gym, and I think also as well, there's a lot of neurodiversity in jiu-jitsu from what I've kind of observed as well. So that obviously helps because they have that lived experience. And also it's step by step, which I think helps for a neurodivergent mind, particularly autistic individuals, because autistic individuals like to know and to plan, and they can with their belts and everything. It's like, this is the next step, right, we're going to tell you this is the next move, then you do it, this is what you're working towards. So that's great for obviously neurotypicals as well, but certainly autistic individuals, because it's steps. And then I think for myself with ADHD, so for me, that's not for me, because that doesn't light me up particularly. That's too slow for me. So I need something more intense, which is why I prefer more of the movement and the boxing, and the thinking is continually going and quick, which is what I need. So yeah, it's interesting what you gravitate towards and the people that you get. And like you say, there's stereotypes as well surrounding it, because a lot of people might look at boxing and think, oh, that's, but there's so much discipline in boxing. There's so many people that go there. It's so respectful. And the one that I go to around here, again, all different people, all different walks of life, different professions, different ages, and there's no atmosphere. It's just respect. And a lot of these people don't go out drinking. They're not getting involved in these things. They are dedicated to their fitness. So it's removing that stereotype, and it's also really crucial in the more deprived areas, because obviously you don't need a lot of materials to set yourself up to do boxing. That's why I think it's so popular in the kind of more deprived areas, because you get in kids with like focus, and you're able to help them at a relatively low cost, which is really good.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. Yeah, no, it really is. I accidentally when it come across the martial arts when we started boxing, and then it gravitated. But then I said because of Calvin loved it, ADHD, autism, didn't like it so much because of it being so open and loud and chaotic.
Yeah.
When we went to jiu-jitsu is now the opposite, where he's the one that's more obsessed than the one with ADHD, and he's still saying I want to do kickboxing or boxing as well. So I can understand. It's weird, isn't it? The two diagnoses that the sports slightly similar, but because it's exactly that. It's when you get places like jiu-jitsu or something like that, and you walk into there, and do you know the powerful thing about it is that you would never know which kid's autistic, and that's what we need to achieve. It's not about giving them acceptance so the autistic people can fit in and we know they're autistic and still wear their little landlord. It's creating a place where not one of them you don't know who's who.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
When you go to jiu-jitsu, and that's the thing that's what drew me to it. I was like, this is the place, the only place I've seen that can do this all as a whole. And it's just because you wouldn't, and you don't even have to adapt your style so much for someone that's autism.
Yeah.
There was someone at my gym now, there's a few people in my gym now that have got kids that are just not in school that still go to jiu-jitsu, the forefront of their life. It's that important, more important than you could argue schooling, because it's of what it does.
Yeah, you're right, actually. And it's true, I guess, for the other side of it with ADHD as well. There's no kind of noticeable thing, is there, with regards to sports? Or certainly with martial arts anyway, you're right. It's trying to, and that's the thing you want to achieve, normalising difference. Rather than it being a big thing, because you don't always want it to be a big thing. And I totally agree. And I hadn't even thought of it like that. And you're right. It's not a big thing. It's just acceptance, which is what everyone wants.
You wouldn't ask the question, and that's the crazy part, wouldn't it? You wouldn't even need to ask the question, and that's the perfect place. You wouldn't even need to go, have you got autism? Or maybe I think they've got autism. You wouldn't even, why would you not see that? You wouldn't. And again, just from doing it in tournaments, for instance, all the kids that go there, I've seen when they lose, they all get emotional, and it's all okay. And that's another thing I love, that you see all these kids crying, and you think in the back of your mind you're going to get dads going, man up, man up. It's just part of it. It's the loser cries. That just happens. And that's how powerful is that, to be teaching kids constantly that it's okay to cry over and over and over again, saying it's okay to cry, it's okay to lose in front of all these people. They're going up to tournaments with thousands of people that don't even like noise, but they're zoned in and they want to do the jiu-jitsu. It overcomes so many more hurdles than I can't. I say at the moment I'm doubling it down with my, I'm just made crying to create as much as I can have it, because it just works for so many things. You're
right. Do you know what, that I think is so powerful and so emotional what you just said there, because it's so true. It's just about belonging and having a passion that you really enjoy, and also have other people that share that passion. And just like you say, having that acceptance, being able to change generational things about emotions, but not making a big thing of it, just naturally, organically happening, where it's just that's okay. And because like you say, those people be invested in that as well. They get it. It's a shared experience. And also, I think, like you said, I think it's really powerful, isn't it? So basically what you're saying is we need to get the people that teach jiu-jitsu to go into the schools.
Pretty much. Because you've got to think they're not SEND trained.
Yeah.
They just do it. It's just the way it just works. However they do it, they're not specifically known. They've not done any courses. They're not even done teaching courses or kids courses mainly. They might just own a gym and got to be a black belt and thought, I'm going to give back. And then that's how it started. But
it's I guess that respect, talking to children with respect, having that belief in them, and teach it, I guess, and catering it to their needs, because I guess the belts and everything is it's catered to what level you're at.
Yeah.
So it's an individual experience rather
And
than
in the gym as well. It's both, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. So it's what we're saying basically is that, you know, people just want to be treated as individuals to what they need. And how powerful is that when that happens? But when you're like anyone, being forced into an environment that you feel doesn't get you, and it's something that is triggering, well, of course you're not going to learn and you don't want to be there.
No.
Yeah, really interesting actually. Yeah, really powerful.
It's going to be powerful. I said, feel free to come and help me as much as you want with this, because I'm going to need as much help. But yeah. Again, it is, and that's why I have doubled down. It's not just, and I know people, because there is people that will just do it, and it's not about the kids, because they haven't won anything yet. It's not about the kids. I'm like overexposing them for losing. Like, do you know what I mean? When I first said I was going to put the stuff out, they was like, no. I was like, no, I'm not just putting the matches out. We're doing a story. You're going to do an interview. You're going to do this. And I was like, oh, no, that sounds good. Because it's not about that. It's about what I found. And it's the first place I found that this all works. And it's kind of like I'm trying to use that to replicate everywhere else. Or at least get as many people through the door in there to see that it can work. And then there is hope that this sort of place exists that you could just all have in harmony. And then from that, whatever's... I kind of really study what it is that makes that different. And then trying to replicate that into schools, maybe, I suppose.
Yeah, I think, like you said, though, I think it's about like a shared belief, a shared belonging, and also like the investment. Like, I think people want to feel like, you know, certainly children, that people as well, you want to feel like you belong, and you want to feel like you're welcome there, and you want to feel like people want you to succeed and to be seen. To be seen as you are is so powerful. To be seen as you are and not have to pretend that you're something else. And, you know, some children are doing that, but certainly a lot of, you know, adults that maybe have been diagnosed later on in life have done a lot of masking. So I think to go somewhere where you can truly be yourself and think, oh, you feel energized when you can be yourself and around people that get it, and people that don't belittle you or make you feel different. And it sounds like that's what's happening there. So that's coming through about how powerful that is, and why, like you say, children might not go to school, but they want to go there because that's what they get for it. It sounds like a multitude of things: validation for their feelings, not being shamed and told, oh, don't cry. You know, it's like, no, that's okay. That's a normal emotion because, you know, because of everything because everything that you've put into it. And that's great. To change that, again, old fashioned beliefs. So that's like wonderful work is being done there, like you say. And I think it's really interesting, isn't it? It's almost like you want a study to be done on that and measured, like exactly how that's done, because that is really powerful, isn't it? I mean, as I say, for me, that what works for me is like boxing and body combat. And what's interesting, when I go to my classes, sometimes in half term, you see like the little girls going past and little boys going past, and they're all looking, and I'm thinking, like, I feel like that's another thing, is doing things with your kids. Like, that's another thing that's a niche, is there's no kind of exercise, there's nothing like that, what you can do with your kids, a shared thing. So you're passing down those good beliefs about exercise, something you can do together. Because I've seen things on Instagram where there's like women working out in the gym and they've brought their kids along. I'm like, that should so be a thing. Like, that's amazing. So instead of just seeing mum or dad burnt out after being at work and nagging at them to clean their room, how empowering to actually see, like, and promoting health, and this is what I do. And there is, I think that's changing, and there's more gyms around here that teenagers can go to, but again, that's just teenagers. But I think doing something with your parents as well is really powerful, which is something I would also like to do, and my many things that I would like to do with Tribe.
When was you diagnosed? How many years ago?
Couple of years ago.
Yeah, I did think so. So, how did you go back to the masking and whole thing? So you must be caught up with that, right? With thinking that you had a different life, that you didn't, like the imposter syndrome.
Yeah, well, this is the thing, right? I actually think a bit differently around that, because I think where I was training to be a therapist, I would have case studies. We would learn about difference in diversity and neurodiversity, and a lot of people that were on my course suddenly started getting diagnosed, and I was looking at them thinking, well, I'm very similar to that. And there'd be certain things, and they say that sometimes, you know, things in life, it just keeps presenting itself in front of you. And when I was learning, as I say, I was thinking, I think I do that, and I think that. But I have to say, even as a therapist for me, you know, because I didn't become a therapist until later on in life, I had, which I don't anymore, but I had that view in my mind, that old-fashioned view of the boys that run around and they can't sit still. And I had that in my mind. And now I can't believe it. I mean, I can't believe that is how but I did, in all honesty. And then when you learn more about it and the inattentiveness, and then, you know, about the hyperactiveness, I mean, now I know. I think, how did I not know? Like, it's so obvious. But yeah, I think I was drip-fed little kind of clues, which, so for me, when it finally happened, it was more like it's so obvious. So it's different. But I fully also appreciate how not being in that industry and not having that awareness is a whole thing, because it's I still do look back and feel sad, I think, for things that I really struggled with, that I literally couldn't help, and things that I got really depressed and upset about, and things that I couldn't manage, and I was always shamed for not managing my anger and things like this, because I just had so many emotions, and I've always been a deeply feeling individual. I've always been like that, and I grew up in a house where that was very much like, you overthink, you think too much about that, and it was always like that, which I know a lot of, you know, people did from like sort of my generation, and there was no understanding to have that, like, oh no, actually that's okay, you are allowed to think a lot and feel a lot, and it makes sense. So now I know what I know, I'm a lot kinder to myself, because there's some things that I just, you know, as a counsellor as well, like, doesn't mean you have a magic wand. Like, there's some things that I still really struggle with, and rather than shaming myself, I'm like, yeah, that is something that we struggle with, we will do it. Whereas before I'd be like, God, you're so lazy, and I would have that negative self-talk. Now I'm a lot kinder about that, but I do also look back and feel sad that you know, maybe things, I think it's natural to look back and say, like, maybe if I'd have known what I've known, I would have done things differently, because I think, you know, if you're neurodiverse, you are usually operating a few years behind neurotypicals anyway. So to not have that understanding, to have, you know, but then I don't think I'd be the person I am now. I've kind of got the lived experience. I know what it's like to go through struggle. I know what it's like to have trouble regulating yourself and go into dark places. And that's why I've used all of that now to be like a therapist that can say, oh, I have that lived experience, and I truly do get it. And that is what I hope to bring with my practice, is that real view of it. It's not all clinical. I really do get it, because I've lived it, and I'm still living that now, being neurodiverse.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've got a question. You don't have to answer it, but I'll answer it. But do you think it's possible? Because I don't think that. Before, I don't agree. I don't think it's possible for multiple reasons. But do you think it's possible for a neurotypical counsellor to practically be able to effectively work with someone that's got neurodiverse needs?
I think it depends what you're seeking counselling for. If it's, I think it could be, for example, if you were going there, I mean, I don't know, it's really difficult to answer that question, but it's like, I don't want to discredit, because there could be something that you need a different perspective on. There could be something that they could really help you with, that you might be perhaps fixed and rigid in your mind because of the way your mind works, and they might be able to offer something that you think, oh, I didn't look at it like that. So I think if it's about understanding you as like an individual, for example, with neurodiversity, possibly not, but it really depends on what you're going there for. If you went, for example, to a grief counsellor and they were able to offer something that really helped, and, you know, techniques or a different perspective of how you could deal with that grief, and rather than shame you, it could be that it would work. I think it would depend on what it is, but I think if it's to do with neurodiversity, I think it's nice to see someone that's got that lived experience. But it really, as I say, it depends on what you need, what you've gone through, what age you are, the connection. So I wouldn't say no. I would say it's just down to individual circumstances and whatever you're going there for.
Okay, yeah. Why I asked that is because I think do we need more people like yourself that have got the needs, that are forefront in saying that? Because I don't think of anything more because I think a lot of people underestimate, and a lot of my calls are just someone saying they get it, And it's almost like sometimes I could be saying I'm doing counselling work, but all I'm doing is listening and saying, yeah, no, you're right, and I understand. And just that alone is so powerful. And I feel like if without that push for neurodiverse counsellors and therapists, there is always going to be that hole, because there's always misunderstanding, not from both ends. Even when they do, if someone goes and maybe the person doesn't understand their needs properly, or people not knowing that their needs could be met in that situation, because how could you understand? Because it affects the question is, it affects your day-to-day, right? ADHD and autism. So that has to be taken into consideration.
Yeah.
As part of the bigger picture of what's going on. But as you fairly pointed out, I forgot about stuff specific like grief counselling.
Yeah.
That might better be for someone that's neurotypical, because it wouldn't make a difference for the grief. But I feel like as a whole, like general counselling, like I feel like that don't underestimate how much that's going to help people, just knowing that you're the same as them. I mean, look, they get to look up to you at the end of the day and realise that you've got a business doing this, and you've succeeded. So you're the role model just by just being there. And I think more people like you should be doing counselling. I don't know what it's like. Obviously, I don't know whether it is a very heavily neurodiverse thing that people get into, but it doesn't seem like it.
No. At the moment, no. But I feel like it is slowly changing. But I think that's just because like society's changing as well, and there is more like neurodivergence. But I think the thing is, it's the stigma of what ADHD is, and neurodiversity, and because it's attached to a disability, I think some people see that as something, counsellors, that is if you're neurotypical, it's almost like you're more superior. And I don't know if that is, like, it's like some people don't want to be attached to it. And I think, like, going back to what you're saying, I think if you were going through your journey of neurodivergence, and like wherever you were on your journey, but you were with someone that's neurotypical, I feel like there could be a possible power imbalance, because like you say, they haven't got that lived experience, and they've got a completely different lens on their struggles that they go through day to day. So like you say, it is needed a lived experience of someone that gets it. I think it just cuts through like so much noise, because you're just immediately there with that person and like, yeah, no, I know, I get it, kind of thing. But yeah, I think it's got pros and cons. There certainly needs to be more of it, but I don't know, but I feel like the reluctance is, I mean, just the wording around what ADHD is, and that it's a deficit and it's a disability. Again, going back to what I was saying about role models in society, there's many successful people that are ADHD and autism. I mean, like particularly, Bill Gates has got ADHD, and, Elon Musk, I mean, I know, obviously, interesting character, he's autistic. It's not about you not being successful, because you can double down, you can be hyper-focused on what you want to do, but what it is that it's not shared, almost like you're kind of, it's like it's not shared in other areas like a neurotypical can function. It's almost like you use so much energy into what you're interested in, what you're hyper-focused on, that other areas kind of get missed.
Yeah, it's like a spike profile, isn't it?
Yeah. But yeah, it's not about not being able to achieve. So there's so many people, isn't there, in society? I mean, some of our best kind of actresses, singers, poets of our time would all be a spiky profile that are, neurodivergent. And I don't think that's spoken about enough, because like you say, in social media and everything like that, it's often about what you can't do. But there's so much strength as well. There's so much about what you can do. There's so much, if you really focus, what you can do. Yes, there is a lot of struggles, but I think that needs to be celebrated more as well. Like, there needs to be more of a community of what you can do as well as what you can't. Yeah. And that would help with that societal view. I personally just don't think, I don't like the wording of a deficit, because I think if anything with ADHD, you're full on and you are more. So it's not, so again, but it's that's old fashioned, I think, wording that doesn't really represent nowadays. So it's changing that whole narrative surrounding it, which obviously you can't do overnight, but that's part of the problem, I think, is how people perceive you, the wording around it, how it impacts them. Yeah, because
I suppose everyone has a different understanding of what that means. So if you're saying, so even you can say, oh, I've got ADHD, that's one hurdle of getting what that means to you. Does that mean that I'm not as on top, or I'm inferior now? Whatever your personal beliefs are, then you've got, when anyone else knows that, you're down to what they believe in ADHD. So that means, so if someone thinks that's a naughty kid syndrome and you've said it out loud, they're going to think, oh, he's little shit now.
Yeah.
So you're risking yourself every time you're exposing yourself, I suppose, by saying with that label about, because it's not just you, it's other people's opinions that's going to shape what's been treated of you, isn't it? Because even in workplaces, if you declare it, I never declared it. I mean, workplaces are not like school, and they are a lot more, I'd say, forefront of adaptations of it. Yeah. You don't put it on the you don't put, I didn't put I've got ADHD, because I didn't know that someone wasn't going to put that and go, Jesus, don't need enough one of them. Because it's there, and I don't think that's out of order. I mean, if there's a line, isn't there, when you're saying, like, you can't just overemploy yourself for that, and you have to take about the needs and how much adaptation could you do in a company, are you facilitated, blah, 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 blah. But, like, it should be your choice not to have to say that, but kids don't have that choice. No. Like, as an adult, you can hide that. As a child, you can't. And unfortunately, for them, like, we're going back to the whole of the schools, and if people's attitudes are very heavily negative or misunderstood on ADHD, that's why they're going to be treated. No matter how... And again, unless they're finding the power of what you said is finding and not being hard on yourself and saying that's just something I come with, or seeing people that are doing that and highlighting the mistakes as well as the positives, and, you know, as a whole, I think that's kind of the way forward with all of that.
Yeah, I think, like you say, it's like pros and cons of it. It's like getting labelled and put into that, like, box which you don't want to be in, like you say, depending on what their opinions are of that. But also, yeah, for me, what doesn't sit right for me is that, you know, superiority of, like, so people know that if you're neurotypical, you can be different people. So why is it that they put you in a box and say, so, you know, there's many different people in the world, neurotypical, many different people, but if you're like that. But that's the thing that needs to change and that's the representation that I was talking about. Because, for example, not everyone with autism likes trains and is, you know, really techie. Do you know what I mean? It's like there needs to be more representation. So that's why I think it's great with, like, Tom Hardy and also for girls as well with autism, ADHD. There's so many different types of people, and there needs to be more representation for people to realise that everyone is an individual. They're not the poster. Like, there's that saying, if you've met one autistic individual, you've met one. That's it. It's like saying people that wear glasses are all the same, and everyone's got different strengths, different needs. Like, it's
well, we have been let's not go down the line of we have been that stupid before with people that are just different colours are just different. Like, the whole society is that stupid. So
yeah. I know.
But that way of thinking, isn't it? Like, if you come from this country, this is going to happen. Or people, unfortunately, we are in a world where some people do believe the minimum of it, and it's easy to put. So Sen is an easy box to put into what it should look like, isn't it? If you're thinking of people still do that with people that, I'm not going to say guys as well, but like with race, with religion, with everything else, let alone a Sen needs, they're going to do it every time, aren't they? Like, that's horrible, and I think the media do play into that a lot, and I think that's how it's held back as well. They're into war between the inner house of what society even treats it as, because you get, like, people saying, oh, you're asking for everything, or oh yeah, everyone's got ADHD, and there is friction. Like,
I think, like you said, though, it goes back to what you were brought up with, your inherited generational beliefs. There's a lot of people that they don't even know, for example, if you were brought up in a racist household and they carry on that, and then you could ask them, why do you truly feel that? Why do you truly feel that someone is that way because of the colour of their skin? They probably wouldn't be able to tell you. It's because time's gone by, someone said it in the family, and then it's just carried on, and it's carried on. And a lot of times it's like you can't hold them accountable. They don't know why. It's just something that's been passed on, and it's changing that narrative. And I know it's not exactly the same, like you say, with race, but with regards to, like you say, those rigid beliefs, it's like people don't even know why. Like what you were saying, that kids they should wear shoes. Like, why? Like, yeah, because I bet they couldn't back it up. There's so many people that say these things that aren't able to actually back it up. It's just about change, about things changing from when they were younger, and some people be resistant to change, and, you know, like a multitude of reasons. But yeah, I agree. When it comes to Sen, I think sometimes, again, it goes back to that superiority. For whatever reasons, you feel like you have to make someone feel smaller to make you feel better. Because some of the best people that I've met don't need to do that. They want to get to know the individual. They want to get to know what they like. They want to meet them on a level. And it's sometimes people, for whatever of their own reasons, like to keep people, you know, in those boxes, because that suits them for whatever job they do, for whatever kind of things they do. So
no one looks after their mental health, right? And that's what happens. You get people like this in societies like this. Not enough people go to people like you and get help and speak to people and become one with it kind of dictates their life, instead of them becoming understanding why they've got these beliefs or why they're doing these things. They just kind of just be that person and just don't care to think about it or get that support. And I think, again, especially you could argue men, especially in that direction, are a lot more rigid in that mindset of what should be done and what's expected than women are. Like, they're kind of, women are like, you can see it again within like talking therapies, a lot of them walk and talk therapies and stuff like that. Like, that's the evolution. It's all like these women's groups and stuff like that. Men are still just like, nah, don't need to do that. You know what I mean? And it's like, but you're causing so much harm by the beliefs that you have, by the things you're doing, the things you're saying and passing on. You have no idea. And actually, you're just angry. That's what I see it come down to. Everyone is angry about something that's happened or something that's going on in their life. And they express it in these ways of hate, racism, picking on Sen, having that opinion about someone's shoes. It's all just because if you actually was one with yourself, you wouldn't have these thoughts. You wouldn't say that. You wouldn't have the need to go out to say it. As you said, you've met people that don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. That's a flaw in yourself, having to do that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like you say, it's like some people are aware, and some people are bullies, and some people are horrible people, and they enjoy it. And like you're saying, there's some people that are actually, they're not even conscious they're doing it. It's those beliefs that they have, or it's those ways that they have. For example, like you say, there's, could be someone that, has things from their past, and they might be quite short-tempered, and there might be things that set them off. For example, the kids being noisy and they're shouting at them. It's not really about the kids. It's about something that's kind of happened. Maybe it's triggered something that's happened in their past that they've not dealt with. But the kids are feeling like they can't be themselves and they've got to tread on eggshells because dad's like this. But, and it could just be the kids are annoying. But sometimes it's things from the past that people aren't aware of. But I think, again, it's removing that stigma of opening up, having a conversation. It's not weakness to talk about how you feel. And just finding what your thing is. And I know you said before that men don't do it as much, but round here there is like, it's called Andy's Man's Club, and it's a group that meets like every Monday, and it's very friendly. It's not like kind of stuffy. You don't need an appointment, so you can turn up and you can just have a cup of tea if you want. You can just observe. You don't have to say anything. And it's really popular. Like, they've now opened like a second one here. They're kind of up and down the country. But I think the key is it's not made into a big thing. So it's not like a big about like waiting times and that creates some anxiety and all of this. It's like you can just rock up when you like, which I think is good because it's accessible. And it's been really popular. There's like 40 men that go like every Monday, sometimes more. Wow. So I think there is change happening, but it's slow. It needs to.
I also think this is me thinking in the future too much as well. But I've got like I say unique view about the separation of groups like males and females. I reckon, if you have a female group or a male group, right, only, you should still have two of the opposite sex in there at least. Do you know why? Because I understand, especially with women, and I've worked with a lot of Oasis, the charity down here, domestic abuse, and I've done a few things and done the donations to them and everything like that. And you can't cure that without having men in the conversation.
Yeah. So
stuff like why you need the women in the first place, because you need the guys that will go over there to then recycle that back to the guys. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I see it again with men not talking. They need to use women's and how they're doing it and look and observe, like, it's okay. So they're not going to learn that from themselves. It's taken us how long to get one walking group? Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Women thriving. So it's because if you close off and just do all men's, then again it's all going to be awkward. And actually, I would argue that most men would actually feel more comfortable speaking to a woman or having a couple of women in there. But again, you'd have to do that carefully within what the group is for. If it is a domestic abuse one, if it's for ADHD,
yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? But I think again, like it's again because the understanding has to come from both ends, and I think when it becomes a problem is when you can't have people in that room having that conversation with them. So that's when it's problematic. Like, when people's sides are too angry, let one view or the other, that they can't allow the other person into it. Yeah.
I think it depends, on, you say, what the conversation is, what they're talking about. Because I think on, the individual, for example, there is men who feel like they have to be a certain way in front of women, and they can't maybe show how they feel. Which the irony is, like you say, what I would say, I can't speak for all women, but most women would welcome an honest man with honest conversation who says how he feels. But not all men feel like they can do that. Again, for whatever reasons they were brought up with, they might not feel like they can be their authentic self and say how they feel. And they might feel that more kind of camaraderie with other men, that they can actually say those things and do those things. But like you say, to promote real change, you need like both to work together to hear how they truly feel.
You need to have like a conversation with like you to know that you can go to them groups and have that conversation. And be like, oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's hard, isn't it? Because again, especially when it comes to women, is that you're so vulnerable to certain aspects of having men in certain groups. Again, if it was like domestic abuse or something like that, so it is very hard to then, you know, kind of, it is very hard. And I understand why there is the groups and there is the need for two different groups. But I think like when you talk about ADHD as something like that, something you could talk about something like it is, because what I see is what happens is, and I've said it before, it's like female ADHD comes out of it anywhere. And I, as much as I agree with there's a difference between male and female, I think that's because of our society differences, because what we're meant to represent, like in ourselves, what a male's meant to be and what a female's meant to be. I think if a woman was raised all with men, she would be like a man. But that just shows you that it's the upbringing more than it is. Obviously, you've got the pregnancy and stuff like that. But I'm talking about when it comes to the differences. I feel like it was already there. ADD was what happened was they took it away. And inattentiveness, 9 times out of 10, I say, is what's happening. What a lot of women are getting diagnosed with, not necessarily because they've got the inattentive type, but I think society meant you couldn't be that boy that was running around punching things and getting out of control because you wasn't allowed. But it wasn't because you wasn't allowed. Society back then, you would stand out massively, and you know you'd do that. So you talk about masking, right? You would know that would sabotage everything. Yeah. Now we're getting to a point where you could kind of come away from that, and I think people are starting to meet more in the middle, and it's becoming more, instead of it being hyperactivity with boys and inattentive with women, I think it's becoming more mixed, and you're getting combined diagnoses, and people are starting to see that it's not. I think it was the diagnosis that went wrong. I think they just looked, they had ADD and had ADHD, and they took the ADD away, didn't change that with anything, then they left. They've now gone back and now they've combined inattentive and thingy, and it's almost like they've changed the threshold. But what they've just done is gone back 30 years and added back into it. Yeah. And it's not necessary. And so I think it's easy to think that, oh yeah, women ADHD depends on that, but it's not. It was there before. They just took it off the cards. That just wasn't getting diagnosed anymore.
Yeah. And a lot of the studies back then as well, it was all based on boys and everything. It's not really like around women and everything and their needs as well. And yeah, like you say, it's so interesting looking back, because I look back now and I just think like I was always a tomboy and I was always out doing stuff and out on my bike and all of that stuff, but I didn't feel like necessarily I could do that, but almost had to be the stereotypical girl. And what I like now is that you can just be anything you want to be, and you don't have to fit into that box, and you can be like, you know. And I love the movement at the moment where there's so many empowered women going to the gym and doing what they want. And like, we've not really kind of seen, not like the movement that we're seeing at the moment, for how people are regulating themselves and their brains, and just being themselves. And I'm sure in times gone by that was happening, but certainly maybe because of social media we see it more. But I think there's a real change, like you say, in how people are regulating themselves, how people can just be themselves and be comfortable. So that is, I think that's like really refreshing. And also I think to then like pass down to the younger generations now to see, like you say, the work that this generation of parents are doing for their mental health, for their physical health. And that's the thing. I think sometimes we sort of feel like, sometimes you feel like you're not doing enough as a parent, but actually there's so much that's happening now that I'm hopeful. You know, nothing's ever going to be perfect, but in a few years' time, like there is a lot of change happening, isn't there, right now, which is good to kind of be a part of.
No, yeah, I think it is. I think we're going in the direction of who cares, in the sense of we're going to the direction of it doesn't matter who you are. I hope to think that's where we're going to get in a few generations, and we're going to get to neuter all of this with everyone's an individual, and it doesn't really matter. Yeah, right? It doesn't matter. And I think like even like the LGBTQ community, I know there is a bit kickback on that as well, but that really was successful in the sense of that really opened the doors to being your own identity person. Yeah. But that does work again with autism and ADHD, and again a lot of autism and ADHD will be like what might be like in that circle, because we've opened the door. That's opened the doors for conversations about who you prefer, which then opens about what you're like, but then again flags back to autism, preference, and like
Yeah.
it all links, isn't it? The more that people are opening these doors and doing these movements, no matter what they are, but the more we're saying it doesn't matter and who
Yeah.
cares, that it affects everybody. So no matter what movement it does, as long as we're saying that message of it doesn't matter, eventually, hopefully, I see that the conclusion will be we all get there.
Yeah. Just to be yourself, and
Yeah.
just to be happy and secure in yourself. Because when you think about it, it's actually wild, isn't it, for someone just to have the nerve to say that you're not allowed to be yourself when it comes to things like that, with like sexuality and stuff like that, and to, like you say, to label people like they not your life. I think that's wild. Like to just be like, you should, be like this, and it's like, no, people should definitely do whatever they want and be whoever they want, and not need to have any approval from anyone else that's not living their life. So
No, yeah. I like to say that this is why ADHD people are needed, because we've challenged the perception on a lot of stuff. And I think this, again, we work hands in hand, because otherwise you could comply to that, but then you need the people to go, no, that's not okay. And they're probably the people, I guarantee, like, if you look at most people that have started any kind of, like, changing thing, I guarantee, like, back in history, I guarantee they probably would have had ADHD.
yeah, 100%.
It would have been that person or that woman from that suffragettes would have been like, absolutely not, we're not doing this anymore. Like, do you know what I mean? I'm going to like, smash the window. Like, do you know what I mean? It's just it's needed. Like, every one of us is needed in society. We should stop trying to criticise what everyone's doing and actually work together and use each other for what we can't do ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like you say, like shared experiences, shared kind of, getting away. Like, I completely agree. I think there's so many people. I mean, I was looking before. I mean, obviously, like Eminem, for example, is autistic, and he's kind of used like his expression of what he wanted to, express about what he grew up in, his experiences, and so many people can relate to it. So obviously, that is actually a good role model for young boys about achieving what you want to achieve and being your authentic self. Because I mean, what he achieved, coming through, like, being like in hip hop and everything, we've never seen anyone like that. And like you say, and that is brilliant, because we need more of that. And like you say, there is people like that in history that have made those changes. It's weird how, like, as a society, you sort of acknowledge that and say, oh yeah, they're different and they've made change. But then if you're just an everyday Joe, then you're like, it sort of feels like there's a bit more resistance towards it, isn't there?
Yeah,
When actually, like you say, I think as well, though, certainly for me, when you're an ADHD person, you are a disruptor and you're a truth teller. And I've always been that when someone doesn't want to say something, I will say it. And I mean, I literally can't not say it. So if there's something that's wrong or moral injustice, I mean, literally anything of unfairness, the amount of, when I was younger, fights that I broke up that I got in the middle of, thinking that I am invincible and that I can just, because I have that moral sense of justice, that if something happens, I'm always that one speaking up. If I'm out and I've seen something and someone's being horrible, I don't think first, I leap. And I've had to stop doing that because I have to be careful with my own safety. But I think it's just inbuilt with me is that, hang on, that's wrong. And then I have to try and like find a way. And there's so many people, obviously, in society that it's probably a lot safer option would see what's happening, look, and not intervene. And that, sometimes is a sensible choice. But sometimes you need people to stick up. You need to be the ones to say, no, that's not right, and I'm not going to stand for that. And I don't care if I get embarrassed. If other people are embarrassed, I don't care. I do not care, because I think I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I didn't stand up or I didn't say something in those moments. And not everyone likes that. Some people like the sheep mentality, where don't make a fuss, like carry on. And I've never been that person in my life. I'm always the outspoken person about things at the school, about work, but they need us. You need people to be like that as well to make change, because people might be sometimes resistant to it at first, but people don't always tell you as well that they appreciate it, but it can come through in different ways. People know that I'm a person to rely on when they want to get something done. They'll say, oh, Amy will say it, and I think, yeah, I will. And so that is needed equally. That, I would say, that is definitely a strength. But also, I think in school, for some people, some teachers that want compliance, They want a compliant child that keeps their head down, that does all of that. The neurodivergent kids, they're not that. Like,
Don't into the numbers, do they?
yeah, no, they will be the ones that call it out, and that's not really a favourite in those environments.
No.
But yeah, it's interesting. It goes back to, I guess, like times gone by in the caveman times. The hunter-gatherers were always probably the ADHD people scanning for anything that's going on. The ones that are the kind of like the fighters, the protectors, and everything. And then, I guess, autism is kind of the more logical thinking. You know, sometimes, isn't it? Rather than ADHD sort of leap. And as I say, I have got better with that in age, but. It's not always a bad thing, is it, to call stuff out and say that's wrong?
No, definitely not. And you promote it in the right settings, and I think that's mostly what the kids are doing now, saying it's not okay, and that's what we're saying, it's not okay. And that's met with gaslighting, as you said earlier, and what you're talking about, everything's fine here.
Yeah, and do you know what I think as well, though? I think the kids that are growing up now, like a lot of kids are, not everyone, but there's a lot of kids that are happy with who they are. There's a lot of kids, because of the time that they're growing up in, that is their norm of, like, you can just be who you want. Of course, there's always going to be resistance, but I think there's more self-acceptance for younger people growing up now, with so much difference of who you can be, what you want to be, who you're going to love. There's that's great, but I think sometimes it's the older generations that have the resistance. Like what you said before, it's the kind of, well, we didn't grow up in these times, and it's
you're going to go through it because that's not fair if not.
Yeah. So
I guess it's off and we'll be fine.
Yeah, I guess it's just pros and cons. It's pros and cons to everything. But yeah, what I would definitely like to just change the narrative around, like building the strengths, having a community that you can like show other people the strengths of neurodiversity as well. Because we certainly know about all of the struggles and all of those things, and I think it should be celebrated to change people's perception. It's like what you said, they're basing it on someone who they know, or you know, they don't really base it on, I guess, the celebs. It's more about someone that they know or something like that, and that's the thing. We all sort of got to change that together.
Yeah, no, it is. No, do you know what? Is it before is a go actually? What is the number one thing that you would tell parents out there for everything, not necessarily just for your job, just as a whole, just like I say, just as a whole, for any advice that you would give as a psychotherapist to parents out there going through this war?
I would say, I mean, obviously, I think counselling is really important. I think get to know yourself and become aware of your triggers and things that, because if you don't kind of like, you don't have any awareness of things about yourself, then, you know, if you don't have that awareness, then your triggers or your things can be coming up and impacting your life and your children's life without realising it. So I think having that self-awareness, doing the work on yourself, for yourself, and to be a better parent, and just to get to know your child for who they are, not who you wanted them to be or who you thought they would be. What do they truly like? What really makes them tick? And what do they need from you? Like that would be my advice, because there's a lot of kind of parents, I think, that, I don't know, don't necessarily see the child that's in front of them, and I think that's really important. I
mean, if you're thinking of the way that you're thinking about it, I could do a whole podcast on that specifically. About parents and sometimes the parent anxiety taking over, and it being more parent led than it would be ever child led. And that does have, but again, I'm not blaming. I think again that's mental health, isn't it? Again, that's because they've been left out. They've just found out they've got diagnosis. They're spiraling. They've been weight depression that's been going on.
Absolutely.
And I think what you said, importantly, is key. I don't know why it's not utilised more, and I think counselling should be offered to everybody. Well, everyone should do it, I think.
Yeah.
It's you could argue the sense of there's not a person out there that they couldn't use it for some benefit.
I think again, it's just removing the stigma, because, like, I mean, I'm definitely not a very stuffy counsellor. I'm very, like, as I say, you can go like do a walk and talk. I think it's removing that stigma and feeling like actually this is more of a realistic conversation, because I think people look, and maybe if they've gone through a lot, and depending on their age, if they've gone through a lot in life, they're thinking, oh, I don't want to start unravelling all of that. But you don't need to. You can just work on whatever you want to work on, and sometimes things come. Some people come and they say, I don't know what I want to talk about, but then they always have something that comes up. So I think it's making it more accessible, making it more realistic, and not feeling like that view in their mind of thinking it's just someone sitting there with a pen and paper staring at them. It's more about also a proactive approach of like, what do you want to achieve in counselling, and it's changing that view on it is a start, and finding someone that you feel like gets you, or finding someone that's similar to you, because even as a counsellor, for me to do my own work in supervision, I went through lots of different counsellors that I tried and like trials, and I thought, no, don't really think that's the person for me, don't really feel like I could open up to that person. And it's so important to find the person that you gel with, so you can feel really psychologically safe, that you can share. So yes, I definitely think that. But I also agree with what you're saying. There's also the time aspect, the fact that a lot of SEN parents are working and they're stretched and they don't have a lot of time. I do get it, but I do think it's such...
That's because it's not a priority, though. That's what I'm saying. If it was a priority and everyone knew how big a priority that is, that would be the forefront, and everything else would fit around it. But when you think it's like the optional extra of the... Because a lot of parents see it as, why would I get help? My son's struggling or my daughter's struggling. And I can see that, but it's almost like, but if you're struggling, then the whole house is struggling, I guarantee it. Yeah. Like, the one holding the ship like you are, doing everything, and you're wobbling, you need to get help, because then you're... And they see it as almost like the last thing to do, and it's like a little reward if they get time, rather than the essential that they need to do to survive.
Yeah, like you said, it is changing that perspective on it. It's actually the root of everything, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Knowing your own self and your own triggers. For example, for me, I have a thing with sounds, and so now I'm thinking like I might be audio ADHD, because I have the thing with sounds, and I've had it all my life. There's certain sounds that really motivate me, certain music, bassy music, that kind of music that really motivates me for exercise. And then there's certain other sounds, screechy sounds, that can just infuriate me and make me feel so annoyed. And I have to carry around these earplugs, because there's certain sounds that just change me. Like, and to have that awareness as a parent is really crucial. So now I know that about myself. The kids know in the morning that they know about like the sound, they know about the YouTube shorts they always have on, and I'm like, you need to get that down with that guy screaming right now. And they know that. And to have that awareness, I'm now not reacting in that moment and screaming at the kids and shouting at them, because they know. I mean, don't get me wrong, they don't always behave, but they know when it comes to the sounds thing, and they say, listen to what Mum's saying, because she helps us with her regulation, their regulation. They know that the sounds is a trigger. So that's like a prime example, I think, of just knowing what the things are for you to help your kids. How can you help your kids? Again, it was a diagnosis. This is why I tell people to always get a diagnosis with their children. If they think their children's got it, then go for one yourself. Because, and again, they say that's, oh yeah, but I ain't got time for that. But what powerful thing than your kids, going back to like what people are going to see you like in your counselling, but seeing like what you're like as a parent, that your kids can look up to you and realise that you've got a house and you've got them and you've had a life and you've got the same thing as them. That is more essential than any short or anything they're going to find online. That just knowing that their original role model has the same thing as them is powerful. Yeah. And I think that, I was just going to say, it's really important to role model what you want to see in your kids, because also before doing counselling, I used to think that because of what I grew up in, I had to almost be the perfect parent to give them what I never had. And what I learned was, no, they don't need that, because you're just promoting perfectionism with children. And what they need is a real parent. They need a real, realistic parent that is real with them and can say, for example, if I do lose my temper, I'm sorry. I think that I was really overstimulated. There was a lot of sounds, and I normalised that, and I apologise. And it's what we learn in therapy. It's the rupture and repair. There's always going to be ruptures as a parent, but the repair is so important, to not leave kids in the wondering, does mum hate me, and is it my fault, and I caused that. To go back and just be like, I'm human as well, I got annoyed, I'm sorry. It's been wonderful to just be able to be like that, rather than feeling like, I think before in the early days of parenting, I felt like I had to hide that. I felt like I couldn't, like I was doing something wrong that was going to be like damaging, where actually no, it's all right to lose your temper sometimes, but just to have the awareness of it and like your own triggers, and just to role model what you want to see, because no, there is no perfect parent, but acting like everything's great for you and like you say everything goes well, that the kids are not going to want to come to you and tell you about things they're struggling with if they think that you don't struggle with all those things, or you don't validate them, or if you kind of say, oh no, that's fine, to just be like, no, that is really tough. And you know, if I think I'd feel the same as you, actually. It's very much about that, which I think you can learn through therapy. Is just about stripping away what you've learned over the years to survive in society and just be real. The stuff that we've kind of, it's called the conditions of worth that you grew up in. For example, with me, it was the like good girl mentality of like, I was quite quiet, wore all the frilly dresses, did all of that stuff. I wasn't necessarily that child, but that child was the one that got all the praise. That child was the one that was like the good girl. And I wasn't like, I was quiet and all of that, but I also wanted to be a lot more. But that was kind of like my worth was measured on that, what I achieve. But actually there's so much more. So I think, yeah, through therapy and becoming a therapist, you strip all that back and think, this is what I thought it should be, but who am I actually? What am I really about? And that's loads more than that aesthetic of looking on the outside. There's so much more. So yeah, I think it's definitely like life changing to get the right therapist and just process things that you have from your past, get to know yourself, get to know your triggers, to then help, like you say, to help your kids. It's really valuable, because if you don't know those things, you could be possibly carrying things on, you know, in the family, and it could possibly, you know, be damaging for the kids if you're not, like, you don't have that self-awareness.
Yeah, I think, if you don't mind me asking, have you got a partner, or are you a single parent?
Single parent.
I think as well, that's a misunderstood thing about how close you have to get to your children when you're the single one going. I think when we've grown up in parents that are more together, and even back then, they had a team, and you could distance yourself. You had that other person to rely on and talk to about it, or what the plan was and what this. We're in a generation where there is a lot of, especially with Sen, a lot of single parents, like, got split households, that you have no choice but to give your child the understanding of what you're feeling, because you can't, you know, you ain't got them pitches to offload, or them plans to do, or someone to take over, or two different parenting styles even. You're everything. So you end up, I suppose it does be closer, but you do have to become, I'm like it with my oldest, you just have to say, my bad. I shouldn't have done it like that. And it's like, I still think of how my mum and dad would done it, but that's because they was together.
Yeah, but I don't know. But I think it's really, again, down to the individual, because there could be parents that are together and they are really toxic to a child. You know, they're not very good, actually, and actually they'd be better apart. Like, you know, that old-fashioned sort of like, oh, because they're together and that, but they might actually be fighting all the time, not get their kid. Like, I think it goes down to the individual, but that I would definitely say is the strength of the single parent, is getting to know your child if you can, because obviously working and things like this, but if you are able to, that is the strength. And I think, like you just said though, normalizing when you've messed up, because I feel like I've closer to my children the more I've learned about myself, and being honest, and just like you say, promoting that honesty of like, I won't always get things right, and you know, apologizing for that and explaining my thoughts behind it. It's been brilliant, then trying to act like that nothing bothers me, because now they'll come to me, and I want that for them. I want them to know that they can come to me with whatever they need to come to, and I would never look at them differently, and I'd always try and help or find a way. That's what I want. But also I think, like, my children's father, we co-parent, and he is a good dad, and it does work. It's obviously different over two households, but he is a good dad and he is supportive. And he is also really invested as well in like promoting their well-being and getting to know them. So I think we're really lucky with that, because that is definitely not something that I grew up with at all.
And I don't think that's from everything I speak to, families I speak to, it's not very common.
No.
That kind of setup, that's kind of like the ideal setup, perfect setup, which is very far and few between, isn't it?
But you can only do that if you have two willing parties, and I do know that we're lucky to have that, because you know, there's a lot of dads that want that, there's a lot of mums that want that, and it is unique to have two people that are able to work together. Not saying that it's brilliant all the time, of course, but I'm grateful for that, because that is definitely not what I grew up with. And I would say there was so much that happened and so much misunderstanding, and yeah, that's for another podcast. But
the whole other one about all of that.
but But that was like basically the thing that was when we were going to separate. It was like, there's no way that's not going to happen, and we have to kind of just be on the same page. But yeah, I'm pleased that I've got that, because I know how unique it is, and I have friends that would like that. You just want to be able to do the best for the kids, and just that's what it should be about. But it is sad that it's rare, because there's so many parents that would want that, and just to put the kids first. So I do get it.
Yeah, I know, but I say, yeah, because it's another episode, because it's like what the damage that does to like a single parent. It won't allow themselves to go on any kind of dates or let anyone else in the household. 15 years without that, is isolated, questioning their life. Everyone around them in the family doesn't have SEN or diagnosed yet, so they're literally, and it causes like a massive ripple effect, doesn't it? And it's very, I've got a lot of parents in that, in that's a whole, at least half my parents are in that field where they're just lost and stuck and vulnerable and cut off.
Yeah, I know. It's I think it's again, it goes back to the understanding. Like, I think the lived experience, depending on your own experience of like yourself and your children, it's quite isolating. And because it's such hard work anyway, advocating for your children and trying to get people to understand, I think when it comes to letting someone in, you're quite protective of your space, because there's so much judgment anyway. It kind of feels like another thing, and like, and what about if someone doesn't get it? And you're very protective of your kids and your space, and so
the longer you do it, the worse it gets, isn't it? The harder it gets. So once for a couple of years, you might as well do it for 3-4. Then you've learnt with kids for however many, it might disrupt them. And then also you've got to think about, especially for a woman, what if that guy's a dick?
Yeah, exactly.
And I've got all these special vulnerable kids that need all this support, and I'm going to ruin their life by putting someone else in that might be a prick. That might, that's something that's got to be scary.
Well, I think that's why there's been this movement of so many older women now that aren't with men. I mean, not saying, I also don't like the fact that sometimes it's all very much like men are to blame for everything, because I think there's also a lot of decent men.
White men, yeah. I'll take myself out of it. I can exclude myself out of it because it's white men. Yeah, they are a lot. There
is a lot of good men out there, a lot of good fathers, and I think it's bad that in one breath, this is something that really annoys me. In one breath, they talk about there needs to be more mental health awareness in men and in boys and in teens, but then there's also a lot of shaming about stereotypical ways that men are, and it's like, well, what's it going to be? Do you want people to be more honest and be vulnerable? And don't get me wrong, there is a lot of but there's bad people everywhere. It's not just men. Like, there is a lot of men that is like that. Don't get me wrong. But I think a lot of time it's very general about everyone, and that's not helping with really anything that you kind of want in the future. It's really segregating.
Yeah,
like what you said.
Saying something like all men or all this, or
all men all the time.
You've lost, isn't it? You've lost the argument because you're not individualising anyone.
Exactly. And then you're not really validating if men are going through something, and that's going to cause them to retreat, not open, like talk as much, feel like they can't do that. So I don't really agree with that. However, on the other side of things, going back to what you said, I think nowadays, because there's so many women that are running households anyway, whether they are officially single or whether they're in a marriage, there's still a lot of women that are doing quite a lot anyway. There's a lot of like people that are in marriages that are basically single. They are doing everything. They are doing everything for the kids. They're doing everything. They're providing. And then I think it gets to the point, as I say, this is a whole other podcast, where they're thinking,
that's a typical setup. Yeah.
yeah. Then they're just thinking, well, I don't really need that man then as well. But as I say, it's that's for another time, I guess.
I've literally just had someone like on the app just go through that first thing. Was like, actually, do you know what? I don't need him anymore. Fuck it. And but like in a good way, I think it was a good thing for her. I'm real party is good and stuff like that. But no, I think you do get to the point, don't you, when it runs its course, and it's empowering to see that people can take that step now and not feel that they need a partner to survive and they're going to look down for not being with someone. You can. It's very perfectly normal to not be with someone in this day and age.
Yeah, and also I think as well, it was the generational gaslighting that it was always like, oh, well, Granny stayed with, Granddad for those years. But back in the day, you had to be married to have a credit card, and you couldn't even buy certain things unless you had your husband's authorisation. I mean, you had to...
Just out of school when he was 32.
Pardon?
And Granny was 16 and he was 32.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, do you know what I mean? It's like, that's questionable anyway. Like,
they kind of leave all of those kind of details out of it.
And, yeah, and he was allowed to beat her up, and no one was allowed to say anything about it.
Yeah.
Like all of them, yeah, but in our day, that's how it was meant to be.
Yeah, amongst other things that was allowed in a marriage as well. Like,
Yeah, that's only just recently been taken. I can't believe how recent that was.
Yeah. So yeah, I think there's a lot of rage, I think, from women from being gaslighted, that you're sort of like, and it's still, isn't it, like very much like, oh, you're not going to settle down and do all of this, and it's like, well, actually, it wasn't entirely how you made out it was, for some people back in the day. But also, I think, to be honest with you, underneath all of that, everyone wants to belong, just like they do with sports and things like that, and there is that need. But at the moment, it just feels like there's such a huge divide, and it's almost like there's a lot of men that are going through a different time because they are able to talk about their mental health. But I think it's also a little bit of an identity thing as well. Like, can I still be like really manly and talk about my feelings? And can I be vulnerable with a woman and not be seen as a weakness? And can I, like, that's the thing, what we were saying earlier, there is many different types of people now, but then also I think there's also a bit of an identity thing going on there, like with teenage boys and certain men where don't really know exactly how to be.
Well, my argument is, if dad's not around, and that's what it is. It's fatherless kids, isn't it, that have been after that because the dad's not around, and that's a dad's fault for not being there most of the time. Again, it goes back to men. I mean, I know it does happen the other way around. I mean, I've been caught up in it myself. I'm the opposite. I'm like the complete opposite of the stereotypical setup. I've got my kid living with me full time, and sees him on the weekend, sort of thing, and the same with the other ones. But I think, men are just having babies and just not really caring about seeing them anymore. It's not good enough to say, oh, but, they stopped me seeing them. Fine, go to court, because, they just give up too easy, I think. I think if men would need to be more present, and I think that only happens with, I think it'll be surprising to see how many kids that got influenced by that kind of upbringing that had a dad in the household, because I think that having a dad that is not like that would would know that people online are dickheads. Because if your dad's not treating your mum like that, why would you believe that?
Yeah.
It's almost like the role model. You wouldn't need to seek that kind of validation if you had a household of a man that was okay.
But also, I think it just depends. Like, I think it depends also, like, because, obviously you can be born into a household where people aren't like you, and you could have a dad, for example, that's a very manly dad who wants his son to be like getting into boxing or doing all that, but his son actually doesn't really want to do that. He'd prefer to play tennis, and he's very quiet and shy. And like, going back to what we said about working on yourself, that there's some dads, definitely, as you know, that would be like, no, I'm gonna toughen him up. I'm gonna get him into boxing. Yeah, that's what he needs to do. And it's like, is that what your child wants to do? Like, what get to know them. So I think if there's resistance.
Where was your boxing? I don't see your belts anywhere. Where did you go boxing? That's how we argue as well. These people who want to kids go boxing haven't gone boxing themselves. You didn't even step through the door. You was that scared. You're making your kid do it.
Yeah, I know, exactly. Living their dreams through their child that doesn't even want to do it, that feels pushed into it. And I think if you grow up feeling misunderstood, then it doesn't necessarily matter if that body's in the house, because if they don't get you, then you'll still have that longing and searching for someone to, again, gravitate towards your tribe, because you want to find someone that's like you. You want to be yourself. So I think it's really down to like the individual, what they look for. And it is important for boys and girls as well to have role models, but especially, like you say, with boys, young boys, teenagers. And if they don't have that, they're going to seek it. And that's the thing, the danger zone, isn't it? Yeah. If they don't have it at home, they're going to seek it from different places, and then they might get up to stuff because they want that belonging, they want that purpose. They might not have had any guidance, or they might have, and actually they just, the other way round, you could get a boy that wants to do all of these things and be involved in martial arts and boxing, and his dad thinks, well, that's not something I want to be a part of. So yeah, it goes down to it definitely goes down to the individual and what they need. But I think it's just, there isn't as many role models that's needed for teenage boys and growing up, is there? And that's the thing that we see with toxic people like Andrew Tate, capturing those people that are very lost, looking for belonging, and using that to manipulate it for their own gain. And that's obviously what you see with gangs and things like that, is getting involved in the wrong people just because they want to like be a part of something. But Again, that's another podcast.
Well, we can take another podcast. But no, I think, yeah, no, we'll wrap it up there if you want. Thank you for your time today. That was absolutely amazing. I think we've got multiple more episodes to come because there's loads of subjects. Very easy to talk, stuff like that. So yeah, thank you. And I think what you're doing is really good and needed and pushed. And I don't know why my voice has done that. That's so annoying.
It's because we've been talking for so long.
I mean, it just started to squeaky. Let me say that again. So yeah, I think what you're doing is very needed, and I think that a lot more people should be taking the stance of neurodiversity in the mental health and bringing it together like you're trying to do, as well as like the exercise. I think that's like a bonus as well. But just even if you just started with the mental health and the SEN, and even just you being in the field that has the ADHD and stuff like that, I think that's going to be more powerful and help so many people. And I can help, hopefully, get as many people to see you as possible.
Yes, thank you. Well, we can work together, can't we? That's the thing, like combined efforts. So thank you so much. Yeah, it was so nice to talk. I'm exhausted now, but like good, like as in that was such good conversation. So thank you.
That's all right. Thank you very much.